Welcome to the GCN Tech Clinic, where we aim to answer your bike and tech-related questions. You can submit your questions in the comments section below using the hashtag AskGCNTech and on other forms of social media. So first up this week, we have a question from Max Craven, who says, what is the deal with junior gearing? I can stay in a 52-14 for extended periods of time, going about 40 kilometers an hour, but I just want like bigger gears. Well, Max, junior gearing, for those who aren't familiar, is a restriction placed on juniors whereby they have to ride smaller gears that adhere to a specific rollout distance that's measured by commissaires. The thinking behind it is that you might damage younger people whose bodies aren't fully developed if you were to give them bigger and harder gears. So something like even like a 53-11 combination. However, this concept is arguably a bit out of date when you consider that, well, they still have some quite hard gears. So if they were to ride up a climb, they could still, put a bigger load on their muscles by riding in a massive gear and mashing it at 50 RPM up a steep climb. So that considered, it perhaps is an outdated rule, but it's one that persists, and unfortunately you have to adhere to if you want to race in many countries as a junior. Arguably the biggest thing is actually the length of the race rather than the actual gearing that you use in terms of helping juniors not stress their bodies too much while they're still developing, as junior races are often shorter. But perhaps that is something that's worthy of review. James Swinney says, recently I've been experiencing lower back pain. I stretch more and more, but I always feel discomfort. Any ideas on the issue? Thanks from Arizona. Well, James, I would suggest that if you've not had one, it might be worth going and getting a bike fit. Something like the Sella Italia ID match is pretty cool, which myself and Manon recently had one of those bike fits, and there's a video coming on it soon, so stay tuned for that, as that might be something that could help you. But there are other bike fit systems out there as well. And also you want to consider other things, such as the type of saddle you're using. Maybe you're not using a saddle that suits you quite right, as that will affect how your lower back is positioned and your pelvis tilts on the saddle as well, and that has implications further up your spine. So factor that in, but I would suggest that's probably the first thing I would look at in your case. Next question is from Cypercharged, who says, do any e-bikes have regenerative braking like they do in modern electric cars? Or is it not worth it in terms of the technical complexity versus the added range gain? This is a great question, and for those who are unfamiliar, regenerative braking is where when you brake, it came from Formula One, the KERS system, you can then absorb some of the kinetic energy from braking to charge batteries within the car and to give yourself an extra boost in sort of hybrid technology now, or electric cars. And this is something that is actually possible to fit to bikes. A few years ago, I visited the lightweight factory in Friedrichshafen, and they were actually looking at this with a really sort of futuristic idea of using electromagnetic induction on the wheel. So they had coils of wire built into the stays of the bike, so the seat stay junction and the chain stay junction. And then on the brake track of the wheel, they installed lots of little magnets. And so you could actually, under braking, charge batteries on the bike. This is a pretty cool idea. I think we probably will see it in the future. There's a couple of things I've seen that sort of incorporate it at the moment, but nothing properly. But e-bikes of the future, I reckon they're going to have it. Next up, a question from DH, who says, greetings, Ollie. It amazes me how clean and shiny your bike is. Can you also tell us what products you use on your hair to keep it in a similar condition? Kind regards. Well, I use the same products on my hair as I do on my bike. And here at GCN, we're lucky to be sponsored by Mech. And so I've got a couple of things to show you that I use on bikes. So on my Orbea Orca, it's got a gloss finish on the paint. And so I use this silicone shine spray on there, and then again, just use a microfiber cloth and then spray it on, rub it in after I've cleaned it. And it just really makes it look ping, and it's safe to use on carbon and and all sort of different components on the bike and rubbers and all sorts. It's, really cool. But then the Pinarello F12 that I also ride has a lot of matte finishes on it, on the carbon, and this matte finish detailer is really good because I've been riding that bike for quite a while now, and it does actually have a few little marks in it just from everyday use. But when I put the matte finish detailer in it and buff it up, the marks temporarily disappear. So yeah, some finishing products can make your bike look really smart, so definitely recommend trying some out. Next question is from Simon Taylor, who says, why oh why are there so many different Mech hangers? Surely there can't be that much difference in the back end of bikes that every single model seems to need a specific Mech hanger. We could ask the same question about many tech related things on bikes, such as the classic bottom bracket standards. Yeah, it would be fantastic if there was just one agreed upon standard of through axles, bottom bracket standards, and also Mech hangers. Yeah, totally with you on that one. Every single brand seems to bring out their own one. One big piece of advice that I'd give to all of you is that if you don't have a spare Mech hanger for your specific bike, definitely get one. Order one now if you don't have one, and have it, and just put it in a drawer and it's there whenever you need it. Especially important to take a spare Mech hanger with you if you travel with your bike as well. I've known people who have traveled to a beautiful exotic location with their bike, crashed on the first day, or had the bike knocked while it was being transported. They need a new Mech hanger and they can't get one because they take a while to arrive, usually because they are all so individual, and it means they can't ride their bike for a week or so. If you've got one ready, you can instantly swap it out and you're good to go. So do that. Next question from Mr. Grumpy 53. Let's see if we can cheer you up, Grumpy. He says, are aero bikes worth it if you spend 95% of your time sitting in the pack? Wouldn't you be more rested at the end of the race if you were on a lightweight bike? On the other hand, if you're a breakaway type rider, an aero bike would be better if you're in a small group that is away. Or he's saying, would an aero bike be better? Well, I have actually seen aerodynamic data from people I know who measure these such things that suggests that even when you are sitting in the bunch, you can save energy and aero still counts. So, for example, still riding in the drops versus sitting upright and being less aerodynamic, even when drafting, does still save energy. And over the course of, well, a huge race, a Grand Tour, for example, it could be significant in terms of the amount of sort of kilojoules that your body burns. But yeah, it depends on the weight difference between the lightweight bike and the aero bike. And generally speaking, in top end bikes, it isn't that much. You're generally talking around at most like half a kilo difference between the lightweight model and the aero one for a professional rider. And as a result, usually on balance, it's better to go with the aero one as the gains outweigh the losses from weight. So yeah, I would say, go aero. This is me you're asking this question to. The last question this week comes from Adam James Cleaver, who says, hi Ollie, why don't the pros use aero bottles for road racing? Surely it makes sense. Well, it's going to pain me to say this, but aero isn't everything. There is more to life than aero. And, well, following on from the question about rear Mech hangers, this is one of the few things that's standardised on bikes. Round bottles are all the same dimension, and roughly round bottle cages are all roughly the same dimension. And that's, well, something we'd like. Imagine if, everyone went down the route of custom aero bottles, it'd just be a million different bottle standards all over the place. What a pain that would be. And the reason why round bottles endure within pro cycling is because they just work. They're just so much more practical than an aero bottle. When it comes to handing a bottle from a car or from one rider to another, it's easier to grab hold of a round bottle. They slot securely in the cages. A lot of aero bottles aren't as secure in the cages, and anyone that's tried them has often experienced them actually bouncing out when you go over a bump and you can lose them. Also, the capacity of Aero bottles can often be less. I think this is something that's best left to triathletes. Although there are specialist applications in time trials as well where an Aero bottle might be advantageous, but most bike frames are actually now designed to be more aerodynamic with that round bottle fitted to it. A great example being the down tube of the Pinarello F12, but also the Pinarello Bolide TT bike is also designed with that same thing in mind because the teams want to use round bottles. They're just more practical. So I hope that answers your question, and if I've not been able to answer your question this week, then keep them coming. Fire them down in the comments section down below, hashtag AskGCNTech, as it is always a pleasure answering your questions, and hopefully I'll get round to answering them next week. In the meantime, I'll see you later. Bye.